And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. He built a temple specifically for Baal and put up an altar for him. It gets worse all the time. And Ahab made a grove. Now, the temple of Baal was to worship the sun god. The grove was to worship the moon goddess. That makes the witchcraft fully rounded there. Sun and moon worship. Of course, in our enlightened society, do we have any of that? The days of our week are named after elements of witchcraft. The months of our year are named after the elements of witchcraft. We are a society absolutely steeped in witchcraft, marked with pagan holidays, renamed with Christian-sounding names, but fulfilling the witch's circle of the year. The wheel of the year, they call it. Of course, you know what the word for wheel of the year is? Yule means wheel. Actually, it comes from the Danish language. Yule means wheel, the wheel of the year. You go around, there's 8 spokes in that wheel. 8 Sabbaths. That's like down in Madison, you got 8 streets going off the Capitol, don't you? You go inside and you see all the railings in there made of marble, and in every one there's 8 supports holding up each one. And then you've got the various galleries. That whole thing is laid out after witchcraft. I told the tour guide, you know, they don't like me down there because I've seen it many times, but I go on these tours and I keep telling them, every time I get a new tour guide, I tell her all about this is all laid out after witchcraft or Freemasonry or both. And they agreed. They said, yes, yeah. And this one looked at me and said, I love it. I love it. One woman from another country, I think it was, she was from Latvia or somewhere over there. I think it was Latvia. And she said, I want to know more about this. She said, but be careful because all of the Capitol Police here are Masons. She said, and if they hear us talking, there'll be trouble. Of course, Van Hollen is the Grand Master of Wisconsin in Masonry. So anyway, she said, but contact me again. Tell me more about this. The only one who ever really responded, when I went back to find her, she was gone and she's nowhere to be found. That was the end of her. Somebody heard us talking. So it's amazing what they do. But yeah, everything is set up in 8s around there. If you go into that place sometime, just check that out. I was down there on Friday. I didn't go into that monstrosity, but I went down on State Street and sat in front of the occult store that's right up by the square. They got this the psychic in there, psychic witch reading fortunes and all this kind of stuff, all dressed in black, you know. And I sat there and fighting spiritual battles, and the Lord was really dealing with me about things. And I remember lifting up my eyes and looking at the Capitol building. I said, there it is, Temple of Jupiter. Does that sound extreme to you? Go home and get out your dictionary, if you got a good one, and look up Capitol spelled with an O-L. Not A-L, that's money. O-L. Of course, they're related. Government and money are related closely. In fact, in German, Reich means rich or it means government. Either one. But I looked at that Capitol. I used to work for Der Staat. Of course, in a sense, we all do. They extract our money and so forth. But I looked at that building, and there it is. Now, you look up the word Capitol with an O-L, it means literally Temple of Jupiter. Who was Jupiter? Baal. It's a temple of Baal. It sits down there in the isthmus up on a hill between the lakes. When I was in Washington, D.C., I went in and I stood right under the rotunda and I looked up and saw all the pagan idols all surrounding the whole thing. And they're so proud of them. and all the marble in there and all the idolatry, and I looked at that and I said, dear God, help us. I live in Babylon. Do you think they build those temples for efficiency? Do you know what it costs to heat something like that or cool something like that? Wasted space. But they got to make it that big so you walk in there and you look at, oh, who am I? Oh, look at this place. I'm only this big, and here this big thing is. I dare not even question what they do here. Went in and talked to my representative and from this area. And actually, both of those boys, the Fitzgerald boys, are both big Freemasons. Sign in the office that said, no man's life or property is safe while the legislature is in session. And they're proud of that. But I was sitting there in State Street and I looked at that and the Spirit of the Lord came over me and there it is. We live in Babylon. This is a pagan nation. That's a temple of Jupiter. And you got people walking through there like little gods and goddesses, making laws and dictates and so forth. And people have to live under that, and you better do what they say. And they're going to take your money, and they're going to watch you, and they know when you're sleeping, and they know when you're awake. They know if you've been bad or good. Whew. Yeah. Idolatry everywhere. And there you see the archways. I was in the governor's office one time. They brought me there. They gave me an award for saving $500,000 in my design that I did for my security system when I worked at the university. So they took me in there to give me an award, and I walked through, I looked up, and here's an oak arch going into the governor's conference room. He was too drunk to come out, and so he sent Jack Voigt, the state treasurer at that time, out to give me the award. I'm telling you, that guy, he would drink so much, he'd have to make 2 trips in any one day. But anyway, I looked and I saw all the signs of the zodiac on the oak going up there. Come on, let's get real here. Let's be realistic. We live in Babylon. This state, this nation is filled with idols. And the curse of God is upon it. And it's finally catching up with them. That's why plants are shutting down, factories shutting down, everything's closing up, shopping malls shutting down. Everything's falling apart, crumbling, drying up. Why? Because of the idols. God said it would happen. But in the midst of it all, God has a remnant people. Now Israel, this is nothing new. It happened to Israel. Jezebel had set up 950 clergymen. Prophets of Baal and prophets of the groves. The groves were the prophets of the moon goddess, and the others were the prophets of the sun god. And people would say, we're worshiping the Lord, because Baal means Lord. I maintain, we baptize people in Jesus' name, don't we? And other people say, you don't have to say Jesus, he knows what you mean. Oh, come on. The people of Israel said, oh, we worship the Lord when we do these things because Baal means Lord. In Chaldean, Baal does mean Lord. But Lord doesn't always mean Baal. If you're talking about the true God, it's never Baal. That's why Elijah came along and, well, let me show you what he did first. He saw the idolatry, the confusion, people keeping the wheel of the year, the pagan Sabbaths and all this stuff, and going up into the hills to worship the moon goddess, and getting involved in the sun god. Of course, the big day of the so-called sun god is actually coming up here on Friday, May 1st, Beltane. And that's the big day that, down in Madison, they'll be having a wing-ding down there. All these witches. But notice what Elijah did in chapter 17, verse 1.